Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Most Important Conversations Daily Meditations. We conduct these meditations Monday through Friday. They begin each day with a short talk, and then we have a couple of variations of meditations that we do on different days. And the source of the talks each morning are derived from our larger program around liberation and creating oneself, recreating one's life, and standing in our power as a creator. That program is called Whole Life Architecture. It's a weekly community interactive program where people are actively creating and designing their lives. And we've been talking about suffering and the way that we create the conditions. As creators, we're creators of everything. And in suffering, the experience of suffering, that is a common human experience. We are even the creators of that. And one of the ways that we create suffering is by not being autonomous and sovereign creators of the pace of our life. We are in relationship with our outer world environment. That includes the people, that includes the culture of how people interact, that includes the rules and the norms that constitute the culture. And so we're always in a context, and this culture and the individuals that constitute it, which includes ourself, is the context in which we find ourselves in our day-to-day living. Buckminster Fuller said that environment is more powerful than willpower, which is to say that the context or the culture or the environment, which constitute the context, is more powerful than our willpower. But it is not more powerful than our creativity. So there's a distinction here where willpower is where we find ourselves meeting a moment of resistance and willing ourselves through it. That the culture or the context in this case, there may be elements of it that you don't align with, that you are in disagreement with, and there is this impulse to resist. And to not only resist in terms of non-participation, but there may even be the impulse to resist and forcefully push back. This is an act of the will. If you think about it, for those of you who are aware of martial arts, one of the principles that any good martial artist will share with you is the management and conservation of your own energy. To not expend that energy unnecessarily. To wait for the other to strike. And then to use the energy and momentum of the other and to transmute it and transfer it into your own defensive action to conserve your own energy. So someone comes at you and lunges at you, and you take the momentum of their lunge and you use it against them. And perhaps that's you throwing them the other direction. Perhaps that's you twisting their arm or flipping them or whatever the case may be, but using as much of their energy as possible and conserving as much of your own. And so their own energy gets used against them in your defense. So this is very different than coming up against energy that has its momentum going the other way. Now, this is a metaphor for life. We may have many things that we are coming into contact with or that are in the context of the culture and the environment that we disagree with. And there's one way to deal with it, which is to resist and to rebel and to revolt and to use our willpower to come against an opposing force that is headed in an opposing direction to where we are. Another is to simply gently move and step aside and allow the thing to pass, or to move in such a way that we use the energy that we could be in resistance to, and we use it and we transmute it and transform it and use it to our advantage. This is not an act of the will. This is an act of creativity. By staying in our creativity, in a space of neutrality and nothingness, it enables us to move and work with energy that we could either be in resistance to or we could use to our advantage. The inclination of the ego is to resist. The inclination of the ego is to come forcefully against the opposing force with as much or more force to try to overwhelm and override it. But environment is more powerful than willpower. If you are in an environment of individuals who are in opposition and non-alignment with yourself, you will, if using willpower, you will exert and expend so much energy that you will become exhausted, and it will lead to your anxiety, your depression, and any other sort of self-destructive states, because you will feel that at some point it is futile. It is a futile effort to resist the context in which you are swimming, the paradigm in which you are swimming. This does not mean accept the paradigm from a place of morphing and becoming it. If it is unaligned with you, you can't do that. You cannot become what you are not. But see, that no one talks about the third way. I can accept and become the paradigm I disagree with. I can willfully fight it as an act of the will in resistance. Or, because we know what resists persists, I can stay in my creator neutral space and learn to work with the energies of that environment and transmute them almost alchemically into something that aligns for and with me. And in so doing, I may, in fact, be able to impact others and help change and transform their thinking as well. This is the third way. But it requires creativity. It requires seeing things that are possible that others can't see. And it requires working with other people's energies and helping to move them. Tai Chi is another example, metaphorically, of how to move and work with energy. This is the physiological example of what we're speaking of, which is metaphysical. And one of the contexts that we find ourselves in, just as an example, is the speed of our society. The speed and pace of the culture that we find ourselves in, at least in the Western world. And it makes us aggressive because we're always already trying to get somewhere from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. There's no flow. See, the third way is all about flow. It is about flowing with the environment and the energy. It's analogous to not trying to fight the river by swimming upriver. Instead, to flow with the energy that is the river, the context of the river, the society, the culture you're in is the river, and flowing with it and using the energy of the river to navigate yourself to a different place, to a different shore that you can safely get off. If you relate to our society as the river, one of the qualities of the river is the pace or the speed of the river. And we happen to be in a river, a cultural river, of enormous speed. And similarly, trying to resist the speed is only going to exhaust us. So how to stay in a neutral place where we can be with the speed, but in our experience of it, we feel totally slowed down and centered. It's almost like, for those of you who've seen the movie from years ago, The Matrix, where Neo is able to slow down his perception of the bullets that are being shot at him. The bullets are moving rapidly towards him, but he's able to stay in this nothing, creative emptiness and space in his perception, so that the bullets appear or occur to him as moving so slowly he can literally pick them out of the air and drop them. That movie wasn't just fantastical, it was based on deep philosophical principles that have pragmatic real-world effects if you apply them. One of the things that has always bothered me is people who will push off philosophical principles and say, well, that's nice, that's very philosophical, but we live in the real world. But do you not realize that everything you experience in the real world is the result of some idea that began as a philosophical principle? Democracy is a philosophical principle until it's put into pragmatic action. Capitalism is a philosophical principle that was written down in a book as ideas from various authors that was then made practical because we applied the philosophical principle or the distinction. So to say something is philosophical and therefore of no merit or not pragmatic has nothing to do with the philosophy and everything to do with the unwillingness to apply it to one's life and make it practical. There's nothing more practical than these philosophical distinctions, because the only thing that divides them from remaining simply an idea or being a practical reality is the laziness that we apply to not applying them. The avoidance of the discomfort and the effort that would be required to actually have them serve us in our life and produce a result. And so the ability to manage our context, in this case, the speed of the context of our society, and not get carried away by the river of the speed of our society, but being able to flow with it. And it's a funny thing about speed. When you stop resisting it and start to flow with it, you get into this kind of neutral space. Now, I'm not suggesting that we overwhelm ourselves. The speed and the pace with which we are experiencing society is a real problem. But in our own life, we are the creators and have the ability to create the context and the conditions for how we are going to flow with that speed, to the point where, just like Neo's bullets, it no longer occurs as fast, and we've been able to slow life down in terms of our perception of what's going on, so that it becomes manageable and aligned with who we are. It's only in resistance to things that they occur as a problem. As soon as we learn to flow with them, we can turn a problem into a benefit. And it requires being in the world but not of it, because as soon as you become of it, You become part of the pace, part of the speed, and part of all of the different variables that constitute the context you're in. You become part of it. You become part of the problem. So how to remain in that creator space? How to remember that you are a creator in the midst of such a fast-paced, busy society with many constituent variables that may not align with who you are. Part of the way that we do that is by ensuring that we are connected to a community of other people on the same journey where we get to connect and deepen our relationship to ourselves, to others, and the environment around us, versus resisting, versus staying siloed, versus being alone. But in order for us to connect with others, in order for us to have this opportunity to co-create with others outside of the context of the busyness of society, we have to realize that life is not about us, and we have to be able to show up from a place of desiring to connect with others and serving others. This is a very different way of living and being in a context, in an egoic context in terms of our society where everyone's making it all about them. And everything wants everything done immediately for them. And yet two people wanting different things and wanting them to happen immediately are going to rub up against each other, and we're going to feel these moments of friction where it feels like nothing is happening because we haven't learned to work with the energy. Instead, we're in resistance to it because we're only thinking about us, and we're resisting the other's energy. So where in your life are you making your life all about you and not aligning with others on the journey and learning from each other and supporting one another and being able to manage the flow of this river we're all in by flowing with it as opposed to resisting it? Where are you in resistance to life? Where is it all about you? If it's my way, if it's not my way, then it's the highway, as the saying goes. Where do you find yourself in resistance to the river of the flow that you're in? And again, not that you need to stay in this river if it doesn't serve you, but fighting it will also not. An act of the will will also not serve you. You flow with it until you can safely step out of it. And then there's another river somewhere else, another culture, another society, another city, another context that you might thrive. Or you might learn to be able to thrive in the river you're in. You may have been in resistance to it, but as you learn to work with the energy of it, you learn to be at peace with it and flow with it and not get overtaken by it. You learn to stay in your center. One way to do that is to connect to others in community. There are other people in the river doing the same thing as you, and we can find each other and start to work together and start to flow down the river together, and suddenly it becomes more enjoyable. And as we invite more and more people into our river rafting crew, suddenly this river that was intolerable becomes something that we have created it to be other than our initial experience. We brought our creative power to it and transformed it through the interaction and collaboration with others. So where are you in resistance to your life, which is making it challenging for you to be creative about how to manage the flow of the river you're in. We can complain all we want about the trajectory of our life, about the river we find ourselves in, or we can stand in our power as a creator and learn to create flow with it. And should we choose, we can always create flow to the point where we can step out of it and go to one or create one that is more in alignment. All of these are choices, but all of them require non-resistance to the river. All of them require not coming or not approaching the context of our life from an act of the will. An act of the will is very different than a creative act. Are we going to be energetic martial artists who learn to flow and use the energy of the context around us, of those around us, to create what we choose to create, long enough for us to either choose to stay in that context or leave and go to another one? But it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be resistance. When we resist something, it comes back tenfold. And that doesn't mean we have to agree with it. This is the power of Martin Luther King's nonviolent marches. Learning to work with the energy of the society and transmute it. It's not against the law to march. And so that's what he did. He worked with the flow of society. Where are you in resistance in your life? Not learning to work with the flow of what is as a creator, but because of the avoidance of discomfort and effort, you choose not to create and instead to resist. As we move into our meditation this morning, consider that. The watcher observer meditation that we're going to go into is one where you get to watch and observe your life. Let your higher self, your emotions, your subconscious speak to you about where you are in resistance in your life. You may be complaining about these areas of resistance that you're in, seeking the ear of someone else to listen to your complaints, to recursively recreate the drama of your story, instead of learning to flow with what's going on and work with the energy and watch it actually dissolve before your eyes in your resistance, in the story you find yourself trapped in your inability to flow with the river you're in. You create all kinds of trauma and turmoil. You're splashing about, trying to prevent yourself from drowning, not realizing that if you stopped waving your arms and kicking your legs in resistance to the river, that you would actually gracefully float down the river and could get out of it at some point, or would learn to enjoy it, one of the two things. This is how we are the creators of our own suffering. The resistance that we have to the flow of life is how we create our own suffering. The inability to accept what is, the inability to work with the energies that are available to us and create something new out of it. You may have much in your life that you are merely tolerating, that is a life by default. It is not a life by design, but by getting creative and learning to work with the energies, you can transmute them. Many of the things you're in resistance and in complaint to would suddenly start dropping away if you stopped resisting them, if you learned to flow with the energy and conserve your own, like a energetic martial artist, which incidentally is all martial arts is. It's all about energy, management, and energetics. So this morning, as we move into our Watcher Observer meditation, you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, but in the back of your mind, give permission to your higher self to go into the inquiry, where am I in resistance in my life? Where am I trapped in what I'm right about, making someone or some situation wrong? Unwilling to work with the energy that is, I'm in complaint and resistance, and it only recursively recreates it over and over again. Have that in the back of your mind as we move into our meditation and see what insights show up for you. Be in a seated, comfortable position. Take some deep, cleansing breaths to relax yourself, activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And by gently closing your eyes, allow yourself to just be. Your thoughts, your emotions drifting in front of you like clouds in the sky, rising and falling, moving in and out of your awareness. And see what insights show up for you. Not chasing them, not thinking, not planning, letting them drift in and out of your awareness. What insights around where you are in resistance in your life begin to emerge. I'll see you all in a few minutes. And welcome back, everybody. Reconnecting to the world without from the world within. Reconstituting yourself to participate in the world of effects, and gleaning and taking whatever insights emerged in your watcher observer meditation about where you are in resistance, where you, instead of flowing with the river of what is, with life as it is, where you are in resistance. And this does not mean tolerating. It means connecting to yourself as creator, to work with what is today while creating the path that will be your future. But always staying connected and present in the now. Being able to connect to compassion for yourself and for others, connecting to your trust of self to create what's possible for you, while also keeping one foot in the now and not losing sight of what is. Being able to work with the energy of what is. This is the middle way. I want to wish you all a wonderful day as you go out and see if you can practice that middle way and work with the energy of what is happening now for you in the moment, present, right now, today. See if you can work with that. As you go about your day, we will continue our work tomorrow with a guided meditation. See you all then.